All right, welcome back. Another edition Bears Nation podcast. It is Wednesday, March 8th, and we have a huge announcement today. Myself and Kevin Lapka, as always. Big announcement today, and it is that Bears Nation podcast, myself and Kevin, the whole show, now part of the On Tap Sports Network, home for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Check out our Chicago Bears coverage over at ontapsports.net/Bears for all the news, analysis, and more that you need. Myself and Kevin have agreed. We've witnessed. We've come into a partnership now with On Tap. We are bringing in our show into their network. So this is now going to be Bears Nation podcast brought to you by the On Tap Sports Network. And so welcome all the On Tap people, all the On Tap viewers, listeners. Welcome to Bears Nation podcast for the first time, if this is your first time. For everyone that hangs out with us regularly, nothing's going to change. Still Bears Nation podcast. Still find us under that name and all your podcasting needs on YouTube, on TikTok, everywhere. All that staying the same. Just now brought to you by On Tap Sports. So shout out to Tony. Shout out to Buzz. Thanks for bringing us in. You guys rock, and we're really excited. So all that being said, Kevin Lapka, we have a lot to talk about today.
What a way to kick off our first episode with the On Tap Sports Network. I mean, post-combine stuff, we haven't had a show in, 3 to 4 weeks? So we got free agency updates a week away from the start of free agency. So we're going to tap into all of that. Franchise tags came out. Some of our favorite players that we wanted to target in free agency are no longer on the market.
But some unexpected names now also.
Yes, exactly.
Conversely.
True. Conversely. So we'll address all of that, but huge show for you guys today. Super excited to get after it, Jake. Let's do it, man.
Great timing as you
take a sip of water.
Drink of water at that point. I thought you were going to go for a couple more seconds. A lot to do, a lot to get into. I mean, as you mentioned, and we'll get into all the free agency stuff and everything that happens with that. I mean, there were some unexpected tags, some unexpected non-tags too, with relationships that Brian Poles and Matt Eberflus maybe have with some of these players, which we'll get into, obviously. But first, draft stuff. Hope everyone is ready for the discourse of trading Justin Fields with the number one pick to get a quarterback or to draft a quarterback. Can't wait, because obviously, as we predicted, I mean, we knew this was going to happen. Anthony Richardson just lights it up completely. It has an awesome combine. Just like some of the sets the record in long jump, sets the record in vertical. Like, obviously his arm, we all know, but now Anthony Richardson, everyone's like, whoa, is this the time? Is this what's going to happen now? And I mean, I don't know. It's just, you're not taking Anthony Richardson number one.
No.
If you're the Bears, you're not taking anyone number one.
No.
But it does add to the intrigue for the Bears, because now maybe you have someone like the Panthers or the Raiders, or a team that maybe even has a quarterback. Maybe it's the Seahawks, who, even though they signed Geno Smith, they're like, all right, well, Geno Smith's deal is for a couple of years. Let's draft Anthony Richardson and have him sit behind Geno for a couple of years and have him come in then. And we'll see what happens with that. That's really interesting. So a lot happening, but again, let's just double down on Justin Fields isn't going anywhere. Justin Fields is going to be your quarterback. Ryan Poles basically said as much, that they're operating that Justin Fields is going to be the starter. But I mean, Kevin, I'll give this to you as our primary Justin Fields defender.
Finally, right? I mean, it was so absurd. It was so absurd that we even had a month of this stuff, man. And it was national, dude. Like, every morning on Get Up on ESPN, the conversation was, should the Bears trade Justin Fields? Like, that was the question being asked. And we knew that was going to happen, but it's still outrageous to me that it was even pondered and suggested by pundits out there. Like, it just made zero sense, and I'm glad that it's finally over. Again, in Peter King's Football Morning in America, quote from Peter King, it's clear he's not trading Fields, he being Ryan Poles, and he's not picking quarterback high in this draft. Yes, finally we have confirmation, and I'm glad, because we had talked about, well, there's strategy here with Ryan Poles about, hey, well, say that you might trade Fields to try to, gain some leverage and some value as far as what the first pick means and everything. And no, I wanted conviction the whole time. I want conviction that, hey, this is your quarterback. This is the way we're going to address the offseason. We're going to, work on finding prospects and finding free agents that are going to help our quarterback. We are building around Justin Fields. And Ryan Poles has been very vocal about that. I mean, he could have taken that route this entire time. I mean, he's been very present. He's been on national shows. He went on the Rich Eisen show. He's, talking to Peter King for 15 minutes. He's, talking to all these guys, which is pretty rare. Again, remember, Ryan Pace did not do this. And yes, Ryan Pace never had the number one overall pick, but this is a rare for a GM to be this vocal. And I think he's doing it for a reason.
Part of my take.
Yeah, he went on Pardon My Take.
Yeah.
How many GMs go on Pardon My Take?
Yeah.
Like, and was totally chill about it. It was totally cool, which I think Ryan Pohl is just like a fun guy. Like Kawhi, fun guy. But, I'm just glad like we have conviction now. Okay, let's move forward. And it's clear they're going to trade the pick. And he says, he said again in Peter King's column, he knows he can get a 24 first rounder and a 25 first. And that could be made up. Like he could be lying about that. But
we hope
that's true. But as it pertains to the Anthony Richardson thing, like you are now the flexibility that you have for trading down, it has now been increased because Anthony Richardson is probably a top 10 pick now, right? I mean, I
think he was probably already, but now for sure. I mean, because like he might have jumped Levis at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what did Levis do at the combine? I mean, he made a couple nice throws, but like, and everyone's gonna bank on, great character guy, Will Levis, leader of men, Will.
Well,
Levis,
it's already started. Pete Prisco, CBS,
that guy's
who he tweeted like if Will Levis was at Ohio State or Alabama, that he'd be the number 1 overall pick, which I mean, he's not the first person to say that by far. Like I've seen that exact statement a couple times, but I mean, it's hard to say. And people have already been carrying Levis's water with his offensive line and who left and blah, blah, blah. But that's not the point. Your point remains that, this is the Bears are, and I hope it's true that you could get a 24 and a 25 and obviously a first round swap this year. That would be great, but I'm not banking on that. Like I would still be happy if it's the Colts and you get 4 and 35 in a first next year. I'm still pretty happy with that.
Yeah. And look, but here's the thing. So like, I'm happy with that, but I'm at the point now where I think you can ask for more because of the Jalen Carter situation, because falling to 4, like, if you're going to 4, the odds are you're probably not getting Will Anderson. I mean, there's a chance.
Completely agree.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a chance that the Cardinals are also on the phone and 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's a possibility, right? Yeah. I mean, I think it's extremely unlikely, but there's a possibility of that. But likely, if you're getting to 4, you're out of the Will Anderson sweepstakes, and after that, then then who is it, right? I mean, I don't. Like things could change the next month and a half before the draft with Jalen Carter and details get released and he's back to becoming a top 4 pick. But as of right now, you're not taking him a number 4 overall. It's just, you just can't. Yeah, I just don't think you're in a position to do it. And to me, the gap between Will Anderson and the next best player, if you exclude Jalen Carter, is significant enough where I'm fine. Like I would be comfortable trading to 9 if I already know that if I'm trading to 4, I'm not getting Will Anderson. Then there's no one between 4 and 9 that I'm looking at where like I can't not get this guy, right? I mean, is there a guy in the draft where you look at between 4 and 9 where you're like, I mean, maybe Skoronski, maybe Tyree Wilson, maybe Quentin Johnson, but I think all those guys could, maybe probably not Wilson, but Johnson and Skoronski could probably be available at 9 if 4 quarterbacks go in before then.
So mine would be Wilson.
Okay.
That's who I would be like, if you go to 8 or 9 after trading to 4 already, it's like, okay, like because Wilson, I mean, he boosted his stock and he's a physical freak, which we kind of knew already. We figured he would boost his, but like more and more people seem to be high on him and what he can do and his measurables, because his measurables were better than Anderson's in a couple categories. I think it was like arm length and size or something like that. Yeah, so Wilson would be the guy where I'm like, okay, if you trade back again, you probably don't get him. But like you said, that still probably leaves you like Skoronski, which again, totally fine with, especially if you sign like a Mike McGlinchey, maybe, which we'll get into, or Orlando Brown Jr. So, and then you could pair them two together, which leaves you a lot of options. But I do agree with your overall point that the Carter situation definitely opens you up more to, another trade down, because I think it was in Kuiper's or McShay's, whoever, one of the ESPN mock guys, I forget who exactly, Carter was 12. And if he goes that far down, like you'd have like, at what point do you have to be like, okay, because, the situation with his, and we didn't have a show before this. Jalen Carter had, charges put against him and warrant out for his arrest for his role in a car crash that unfortunately led to 2 people losing their life. That sucks and it's a terrible situation, but it was misdemeanor, and his role in the whole thing was kind of like, ambiguous, I would say is the right word, possibly. And so it's like, okay, if he answers those questions, because he was gone from the combine for one night and he was still there for all the, tests and to run and bench and all that stuff and do meetings, most importantly, and answer questions about that night and what happened in the situation. So if a team in this, situation or in this scenario, the Bears talk to him and they're like, okay, he answered these questions and we feel good about, where he was and what his relation to the incident was and so on and so forth, then maybe they go from there and they're like, okay, well, we'll still take him at 9 or 8 or whatever it is. If he's still there, if other teams are like, oh, I don't really know. But also, I don't know if this regime is the type to take that kind of
Doesn't
risk.
seem like it.
It doesn't seem like they're like, not even just risk, but like, that kind of, they don't want to kind of deal with the possible backlash more than anything. It seems like this regime, like Ryan Poles and Matt was kind of like to play it a little safer. Because what was it? I think Ryan Pace signed like Robert Nagdinche for like a day, and he had like some weird, allegations and charges, and then they cut him like the next day or something. And that was just a practice squad player, I think. It wasn't even like a start. So possibly, who knows? There's a lot of unknowns and question marks to be answered around that over the next, 8 weeks or so. I think 7-8 weeks, whatever it is. So we'll see with that. But I think it's definitely open to a second trade down. If, because Vegas now is like, and the thing is like Lamar Jackson kind of makes this whole thing murkier because the Falcons now say, no, we're good. We're going to roll with Desmond Ritter, which is
they're not rolling.
insane.
They're not rolling with Desmond Ritter.
I mean, if Vegas gets Lamar Jackson, does that take them out of it? Because Aaron Rodgers says he's not playing for Vegas. Like he has no interest. Okay. So what do they do? And so a lot of different, like, does Carolina get Lamar? Like, does Carolina get Aaron Rodgers? And then like, it's a whole thing. So like Lamar kind of changes it and just be ready. Be ready for should the Bears trade Justin Fields and number 1 or something, or should the Bears trade Justin Fields and number 4 to the Ravens for Lamar, which is a huge no for sure, because you are not ready to have Lamar Jackson as your quarterback and be ready to compete. Like the Bears still have way too many holes. Lamar Jackson does not make you a Super Bowl contender right away. But I mean, obviously there's people on Twitter like, if you're not a top 5, blah, 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 you should be calling Lamar Jackson. Well, the Bears aren't ready for that right now, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother situation. But as far as the draft goes, we did learn a lot. And we'll go, Kevin, I think this is a good question that you had on the rundown. Who'd you say the 6 blue chip players are on Poles' board? And give yours. I mean, you like, I haven't given mine yet, but you have yours. Oh, jeez. You have yours listed. So please.
Yeah, he says he has 6 to 8 blue chip players. Well, he has like this color system ranking that's really just random and out of order. I don't know why blue is the top. I guess blue is the top.
We always call it top tier blue chip players.
But like the next one is like red, I think. Like,
yeah, okay. I think it was blue, red, orange.
Yeah, some gold was in there. Gold was in there.
I think it was blue, red, orange, and gray.
Yeah, like I guess that's fine. I would have been like blue, then like gold. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Anyway, it was very random. But trying to figure out who those 6 guys are is really interesting because it's not like I think people need to understand it's not just the consensus top 6 guys. Like,
sure,
teams evaluate players extremely differently, and some of the guys that I have on here are guys who could be, the 20th overall pick or the 15th overall pick. And I don't have any quarterbacks on this list just because I don't. Again,
so that's my thing. I don't think it necessarily means there are no quarterbacks on there because if it's an objective evaluation,
sure. Like CJ Stroud could be a blue player for them.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean they're going to draft him.
Yeah. I'm not saying all the quarterbacks are on there either.
But like the only reason I'm hesitant to put it on there is because, well, he said he has to be blown away by someone in order to draft them, very early in this process. Right. Does a blue player equate blown away? I don't know. So for the sake of everything that we know about, at least what we think we know about him keeping Fields and that not being I'm just going to leave it out for the sake of the list here. So I have my 6 players that I believe Ryan Poles has as his 6 blue players. I think one is Will Anderson. Obviously, that should be everyone's blue player. Quentin Johnson, I think, is also a consensus blue player for most teams. He cleared, one of the highest wide vertical jumps. I think he was second in vertical jump and second in broad jump behind Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee in the combine. Everyone expected him to do that. Freak of an athlete. Quentin Johnson should be a blue player for most teams. Tyree Wilson had a great conversation with the Bears. He said he would love to play for them. Good conversations, good press conference. I think he kind of skyrocketed up people's boards after that. After he talked about, wanting to play for the Bears and just, high character guy. So I think he's a blue player. I think Peter Skoronski probably is, just because he's the highest rated offensive line prospect. I would imagine. I must have taken him off of this. I do think Devin Witherspoon is probably a blue player. Performed extremely well at the combine.
People love
him.
now.
Watching his tape. I mean, he is just
he's awesome.
He's awesome. He's really freaking good. Who would have ever thought U of I guy was going to be that high? I mean, there you go. Shout out to the Fighting Illini there for Jake. I do think Jackson Smith and Jigba's on there. That's the one where probably a lot of people are going to say, well, I doubt it. But I also would advise that, okay, if you really think about, who Ryan Poles is declaring as the blue players, I have to imagine it's somewhat tailored to the needs of the team, right? So, well, let's give a blue player, like JSN's a blue player because, hey, we need a wide receiver, so we're willing to evaluate deeper. I mean, and I could be completely wrong about that. It could be completely objective. Here are the top 6 players in the draft. Let's walk away. We have a lot of needs on the team, just top 6. But obviously, I think especially after the way, like in a lot of situations to me, combine performances should not affect your draft stock. They shouldn't. I mean, if you're an evaluator of a football team, you probably know what that player is capable of before and after the combine. Like the needle should not really be, the needle shouldn't have been a move for Anthony Richardson as much as it was, in my opinion. I mean, if you watched him play this year, you knew what he was going to do, right?
Sure.
Like, but for some reason, people get caught up in these numbers that, running in a straight line, it looks great, but it's not applicable to an NFL game. Like, let's just get that out of the way. But Jackson Smith and Jigba was one player where if there was ever a situation where your combine performance at least reinforced what you were able to do as an athlete, it was what he did, posting the best short shuttle and the best 3-cone drill, which speaks to his fluid hips and his clean route running. So I have Jackson Smith and Jigba on there, and then Lucas Van Ness, edge from Iowa, who also had a great combine performance. Those I think are the blue chip players that Ryan Poles has on there. So just speculation, but I don't know if you have anyone on there that I don't have. If you can think of anyone that you think they might be keeping their eye on.
Yeah. So like the thing is, when we kind of touched on this a little bit, like blue chip is like, because I think it's objective. I don't think it's based on team need. Maybe it is. And maybe that's why, that's when you come into like draft trade downs and whatever, like comes into play. And that's why it's like, okay, well, this guy is a red player, so we're comfortable taking him at 8, but not 1 or not 4 or whatever. So I don't know. It depends. I do think the one thing I will say, I think Jalen Carter is still on there probably. Like just from a pure football standpoint, I think he's probably still in that blue territory, because let's be honest, you were considering taking, like, we were on the show and we're far from the only people that have said this, but saying like, well, you could stay at number 1 and just take Jalen Carter because he's that good. I still think he's on there. I'm not sure about the receivers, but who knows? I would say for the most part, though, this probably seems right. One that I would say is borderline is maybe Paris Johnson Jr.
Yeah, that's borderline.
But I would say that's borderline. The only other one that I would say for sure is Jalen Carter still. But obviously, we already mentioned, like, that's still super up in the air and weird, and we'll see what happens with that. It's just like there's so much that we just have to like guess on, like, from the combine, and there's just so much that we have to guess and speculate still when we have 7-8 weeks to go.
Yeah, there's a lot to speculate, but so here, this leads perfectly into something that I want to hit on. So Rich Eisen said a couple days ago, the Bears are, quote, far down the road of trading number 1 overall.
Yep.
And, the combine is I think people need to understand, like, as far as the validity of these reports, the combine is a very transparent time period. Like,
sure,
people, like, it's a very casual, event. People, like, it's Indianapolis. There's nothing to do. Everyone's in the same place at the same time. People are talking. Like, the chatter, I think, is really real when it comes to things that people hear at the combine. And Rich Eisen, the host of all the combine stuff, is one of the most in tune people of anyone in Indianapolis for that week. So I think that's a valid thing. And this is why, I've been talking about it for months, right? About the timing of when they're going to trade the pick. And I said, I doubt that they're going to trade it on draft day. And I think it'll happen sooner rather than later. That appears to be the case. And it's extremely important because it shapes how you evaluate everything. And it shapes how you approach free agency, right? I mean, if you trade, because now the flexibility has increased to where it's a very real possibility, in my opinion, that they could just like a double trade down would be ideal. Right. And that would probably happen over okay. So you trade down to 4 this week and then, next week or maybe even on draft day at that point, then you trade down again. I think it's a real possibility that like this week they just trade to 8 or they just trade to 9. And I think it's really
straight from 1.
Straight from 1. I mean, and if that happens, you were talking about an all-time haul. If that were
Definitely,
to happen,
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about probably the biggest most compensation in NFL draft history. But I think it's important because, again, if you are going down to 8 or 9, maybe not 4, but if you're going down to 8 or 9, Carolina, Atlanta, 2 teams that I think are intrigued by what the Bears could offer there. It completely changes how you approach free agency, right? Because once you look at 8 and 9, okay, we're not getting Will Anderson, we're probably not getting Tyree Wilson, but we're in a great position to either get Quentin Johnson or Jackson Smith-Njigba. That's our solution at wide receiver 1. Let's pay attention more to defense here in free agency. We know we're not going to get a blue player at defense probably at number 9, right? You have more of an idea. You can structure your offseason if you make that trade, and I think that's why he wants to do it. And, he talked about in the Football Morning in America with Peter King, he talked about this opportunity of having the first overall pick to be, the sort of franchise-changing event and to sort of mend all these problems that the Bears have had. And it's like, well, obviously he's talking about a trade down, but you have more of an idea of how to mend those problems if you know what is probably going to be available to you at 8 or 9 and let that structure the way you approach free agency. There's less ambiguity as far as what you're going to be able to do, right? What you need to do, what the needs of the team are. If you understand in general who your blue players are, which blue players will likely be available. And of course, the draft is such a volatile time. Guys fall who you don't expect to fall, but you have an idea of who you want that's going to be available at 8 or 9. And that dictates how you approach free agency, in my opinion. So that's why, I want this deal to get done. We have 7 days. We're recording this March 8th. Free agency begins March 15th. Get this deal done as soon as possible. Know what you have in the future. Know what, you're getting an extra second pick, probably too, second round pick. If you make a trade down to 8 or 9, know what you have available to you. Maybe that gives you the opportunity to draft a running back, right? You can have a blueprint laid out for your offseason if you make that trade now. And you want that security, right?
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to, okay, you hold one, go through everything in free agency, and then you're kind of scrambling on draft night to be like, okay, well, maybe we have to get to 4 because we don't want to take, because we signed Frank Clark in free agency, and we signed McGlinchey already, and we don't want to take Pete Skoronski number 1 overall. So yeah, I mean, I definitely, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people are calling, BS on Eisen's report and the things they're saying, this is all smoke. The Bears are trying to drum up, which there is a part of me that does kind of agree that Ryan Poles might be a little too aggressive in broadcasting. Hey, we're for sale, we're open. It just feels like he's pushing a little too hard.
Why?
Because then you have teams who are going to be like, okay, well, we can wait. And now if we know that the Bears want to get out of this so badly by X day, let's say it's by free agents. Let's say by the 14th, the Bears want to be out of this pick. Now teams can say, and I'm not saying that people know this or that that's for sure what's going to happen, but hypothetically, let's say in Ryan Poles' head, he's like, all right, I want to be out of number 1 by March 14th so that I can go into free agency already having a clear idea of I'm not at 1, I'm at, let's say 4. And now that's how I'm going to tailor my plan, as opposed to tailoring free agency around what might happen with number 1, if you might stay or might. So now teams can sit back and let's say you're the Panthers or the Colts or whoever, and you can say, all right, well, I have 6 days to burn here to make the Bears sweat instead of them making me sweat.
You don't hold the leverage.
Right. Because it just feels like Ryan Poles is giving away some of that leverage by being like, yep, we're trying to get rid of it fast as possible. Let's say Eisen's had a whisper that the Bears are down the road, but not as far down. Maybe it's a little bit, laid on thick a little bit of how far along they are really in this negotiations, and embellished a little bit. That's what I was looking for. Embellished a little bit of how far along in this process of negotiations they are, because the Bears want to try and get someone to jump, be like, oh, they're talking to someone, I got to do this now. Instead, people are like, that's BS. Maybe they are talking, but I have a couple days. If you're Jim Irsay or, you're Tepper with the Panthers, I have a couple days. I just feel like there is something to be said with possibly holding it a little bit tighter. That's just maybe not super tight where you're not giving anything away, but a little bit tighter. And I could just be going to galaxy brain with this. Totally possible. But I do agree that I think getting out of the pick sooner rather than later so that you can then go into free. Like, let's say you want to stay at 4 and you're saying, okay, 4, even if we don't get Anderson, we'll take Wilson and we're good with that. And then we'll structure free agency around that. And we'll go get Okiri, the linebacker from Indianapolis, who's now a free agent. And then we'll get McGlinchey and we'll do this and that and go down the board. And we're just going to stay at 4 and take Tyree Wilson. Great. Or Will Anderson, whatever. We feel good about who we can get at 4. And then if everyone's gone or there are more people than we thought available at 4, we'll trade back again then at that point. So I do kind of agree with that. I think that would be the smarter thing, but also that's why we're not working as general managers in the NFL.
Well, I think also where you're right is the whole Anthony Richardson thing makes that more valid for those teams because, like, Ryan Poles, we say, oh, yeah, we know we can get all this and this, and we want it to happen, blah, blah, let's force the issue. And if you're Carolina or in Atlanta, and based on your evaluation of Richardson, like, you don't need to trade up to 1 if you're comfortable getting Richardson, right? You're like, well, we're not going to give you all that. We're fine now because we saw what Richardson did. He, rose on our draft board. And at 8 or 9, we think we could probably just trade up to like 5. We don't need to trade up to 1, right?
Or not trade up at all.
Or trade up at all. Like maybe he falls to us at 8. I don't know if he would, but there's less of a sense of urgency again. And this has been the topic all along because if you are going to give up the 24-1, the 25-1, and all these assets, like, are you confident enough in Bryce Young's deviation from the rest to give up that many assets, right? Because that's what you're doing. I mean, you're not trading. No franchise, like, there should not be any, like, I think, in my opinion, if this pick gets traded for a significant haul to a team beyond probably number 4, it's going to be for Bryce Young. Like, they have, like, it's not going to be anyone else, right? They see, because he was number 1 from all along. He's got the most accolades in college. He's, we've seen it. Everything is there for him aside from the size, but you have this evidence that Kyler Murray can be productive. Drew Brees, like Russell Wilson,
200 pounds.
Yeah, he weighed in 200 pounds, and the height was a little bit lower than what was listed at Alabama, but so is every player that's ever been measured is always lower than where their height is listed in college. So I just think the Anthony Richardson thing is just it's good and bad for the Bears because it's good because it gives you the opportunity to trade down probably a second time, but it also allows some of those teams in between 7 and 11 to be a little bit more patient, right? To be a little bit more patient, say, hey, we sort of have this in our back pocket. Some teams who know, hey, maybe it's not urgent for us to take a quarterback this year, but if he falls to us, right, we will take Richardson. Tennessee could be one of those teams. Like Tennessee at 11. I mean, when the Dolphins traded with the Niners to 2, the Dolphins were like, or sorry, vice versa. When the Niners traded up to get Trey Lance to 3, sorry. Yeah. I think they were like 14th overall or something. I'm pretty sure they were pretty far down there. Let me double check on that. But like, don't rule out some of these. If you're talking about a second trade down now,
right.
12-1. I mean, God,
that'd be
you're
Houston
talking about
again.
Where's that would be Houston. Where's Atlanta? Or sorry, Tennessee 11.
Tennessee
11-1. It would be an all-time haul. But I'm done with the speculation. Let's just get this trade done with so we don't get it anymore.
Right. The sooner that this gets over with, the sooner that we can actually, I mean, because even for us talking about free agency, like it's hard to say what you're going to do in free agency. I mean, obviously we have a wish list and who you'd like to see. And there's obviously nothing wrong with pairing Will Anderson with Frank Clark, or, you could do both, but it just gives us a clear idea, I feel like, which definitely helps. But it's conversely on the Richardson thing, like, maybe there were teams at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, that are now like, oh crap. Like we thought he was going to fall. And now it's
that's fair.
It could, that's what's so stupid about this. Like it could go both ways. Like you can make the legitimate argument. It could go both ways legitimately.
Okay. But also, so here's the thing, right? And this is actually an interesting conversation as it pertains to Justin Fields, because I don't know if you remember, there was no combine that year because of COVID. If Justin Fields had competed in the combine,
were there pro days still? Then?
Yes, there were pro days, but people are always skeptical of pro day times and pro day metrics.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like home field.
Yeah, because that was the infamous Zach Wilson pro day where he throws that stupid ball that that gets him number 2 overall.
Yeah.
But like, if Justin Fields were participating in that combine, he's probably doesn't fall that far. He probably just doesn't. And again, that's the fault of scouts for not realizing his athletic ability, that you didn't realize you need him to run a 40 time to realize that. But I also, as it pertains to Anthony Richardson here, I think this is going to taper off a little bit, right? Like people are going to remember, okay, this guy has only played in 13 games. His numbers aren't that impressive from college. You know what I mean? Like you're at right now the high of his draft evaluation. Okay, because the numbers are great. We're banking on athletic talent. Look at the way the league is trending with all these young athletic quarterbacks. Always a blend of Josh Allen, Justin Fields, and Mahomes. All these stupid comparisons. And then we have a month and a half left of this, and it's you're at the top of the parabola, right? And then you're gonna come down a little bit. We're bringing out 8th grade math here. You're going to come down, 13 games started. But you know what I mean? Like all these things are going to come back to light. And I think at the end of when it's all said and done, he is going to be the 4th quarterback taken. Like when it's all said and done, I don't think there's going to be any surprises about the order of quarterbacks that are taken. I think it's going to be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. Boom. Put it on paper. Like I don't think it's going to be jumbled that much. I personally, unless again, Will Levis pro day, he makes some off balance throw. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the Zach Wilson effect. But
who didn't? Was it Young or Stroud didn't throw at the combine either? They're waiting for their pro day. One of them too.
Young didn't throw.
Young did there, so there's still that to go to. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Obviously, a lot of guys had really good combines, and they'll jump up from that and stuff. Should we do franchise tag stuff? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Well, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, RIP to Kevin's dream of Tony Pollard. He got franchise tag. That is out the window. Another one that a lot of Bears fans wanted, Saquon Barkley gets tagged because the Giants end up coming to contract terms with Daniel Jones, which I am going to make sure, 20 years from now, that my kid is the most mediocre quarterback in the entire world who could run a little bit. Because if he could get $80-some million guaranteed from that, holy crap. I mean, good for Daniel Jones, but still. So Saquon Barkley ends up getting tagged. So he's out now. Tony Pollard is off the market as well. Darren Payne is off the market, who was a player that a lot of Bears fans and a lot of people were like, oh, Bears could go there. Obviously, defensive tackle. Josh Jacobs, I wasn't really interested in him. Evan Ingram gets tagged, which you have Cole Kmet, who really cares. What's more important and what's really interesting here is the Eagles are letting all of their corners go, basically, seemingly. Orlando Brown Jr. doesn't get tagged. Frank Clark does not get tagged. He gets released outright. And Draymond Jones doesn't get tagged. Unexpected names in there. And Bobby Okiri from Indianapolis, the linebacker, who's famously from Matty Flus's system. He got released outright as well.
Did he get released?
I think he got released.
I don't think he got released. Did he? There's no way. I just don't think he got
either that
tagged.
or he wasn't tagged and is now just a free agent.
I think he's just a free agent.
Okay, so that. But a lot of names available for the Bears. Obviously, I mean, the headliner is Orlando Brown Jr. still, the top offensive lineman on the market. And now Frank Clark is kind of interesting too. Like if the Chiefs are, and again, the Chiefs could agree to long-term contracts with these guys still, but seemingly going to let them both at least test free agency. And if you're the Bears with all that money, and you have the Ryan Poles connection.
For who? Frank Clark?
Clark or Brown?
Or Brown? Yeah.
Both.
Real quick, I just want to say something real quick about the running backs. Like, if I'm Tony Pollard to Saquon Barkley, I'm pissed. I mean, a running back on the franchise tag is the worst possible thing in sports.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
They're getting like $10 million. But at running back, it can change in a year, right? You go down, the next guy comes up and plays just as well. That will lose you $40 million. Like right there, if you go out for a couple games and the guy behind you plays well, and then, you're not worth a big contract. Well, I mean, so if I were both those, I would try to force a trade if I were one of them.
You're seeing it with David Montgomery right now. David Montgomery missed a couple games over the last couple years. Everyone loves Khalil Herbert now. Yep. And now like seemingly nobody wants David Montgomery back.
Exactly. And Bears didn't franchise tag him, obviously. Yeah. But I only said it because I wouldn't be surprised if Tony Pollard or Saquon Barkley request a trade. I don't
want to give up draft.
I wouldn't give up a draft pick. I'm just saying it's just an NFL thing in general. I think it sucks for those guys. Anyway, Orlando Brown Jr. again doesn't get tagged. Not surprised. It would have been his second consecutive tag. It wouldn't make any sense. They don't come to term on a long-term deal. Frank Clark intrigues me. The Pulse connection's there. Played 15 games last year. He's 29 years old. Will be 30 when the season starts. Health is not an issue. Had 5 sacks, 39 tackles.
Postseason leader in sacks.
Was he the postseason leader in sacks? Yeah, there you go. I think he also believe he broke the record for most sacks in postseason history.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
That's what I was saying.
I didn't know if you're talking about the 2023 postseason alone.
No, broke the record.
Yeah. So
Really
obviously, really good impact player. Again, stats don't pop off the screen from the entirety of the season, but the Pulse connection is there. He's gonna be cheap. I mean, he was released.
Will he?
He'll be relatively cheap. You're not paying top dollar for him in comparison to some of the other
like you would have for like Darren Payne,
or even Javon Hargrave, different positions. But I like it a lot, and a surprise release it was. But the Chiefs have to clear cap at time. When you pay Patrick Mahomes that amount of money for 10 years, you're going to have to find ways to clear cap, and I think they saved like a significant amount of money from it. But the other name that you didn't even mention, what about Bobby Wagner, released by the Rams, still efficient at age 32? Let him be a leader for Jack Sanborn?
For Jackson.
Well, I mean, seriously, people think, do you think Jack Sanborn's on a rookie contract for 4 more years. He's going to be in the mix, right? I mean, you're not going to release him.
Theoretically. And so that's kind of like, so let's like focus on the defense because that's where you have a lot of holes. Like, okay, let's think of it this way. Like Frank Clark, you would pair with ideally a rookie, like whether that be Wilson or Anderson or Miles Murphy, or Carter. You pair those two together. Linebacker, you pair Wagner with Jack Sanborn. That's not bad. Obviously your corners are pretty set. You're okay there. In safety, you had Eddie Jackson with Jacoby. Like pairing those guys with, I don't hate it. Now that I'm like talking through it, I don't hate it. Actually, that'd be pretty nice because that takes you like let's say Wagner with Sanborn and then Clark with, let's say, Wilson. Like if you trade down to 4 and you don't get Anderson, that brings your defense from really bad to like at least above average, like at least top half of the league.
I mean, the secondary is great. The secondary is going to be great.
I would still like an upgrade over Kindle Vildor.
Sure. And you could find that in free agency.
Or even later in the draft.
Right. I mean,
look, that's not bad.
It gets you excited. Right. And like, if you do that, right, because you're talking about, again, Bobby Wagner's 32, Frank Clark's 29. These are not 5-year contracts. You're probably looking at 2, maybe 1-year contract for Bobby Wagner, but probably like a 2 to 3 year contract for Frank Clark because he's a couple years younger.
3 to 4 for Clark.
Yeah, probably 3 to 4, and he's still proven enough to deserve something like that.
Wagner 2 to 3, yeah.
Wagner's stats last year were actually incredibly impressive. He had 6 sacks. 140 tackles and 2 interceptions.
The Rams are paying so many. Like they're paying Stafford, they're paying Kupp.
They had no choice.
They had no choice.
So that's a good point because there's always sort of a stigma about just like the word released. Like, he's released. He's bad at football.
Now,
yeah. No, like it's just like contract situations are weird, and they couldn't afford him. Like, it makes total sense.
Which, in the case of the Chiefs and the Rams, you got your ring, you accomplished it. Like they're probably like, okay, yep, great. Like
thanks.
Thanks. See you out there. Like, thanks for the ring. Yeah, for sure.
And I think the other thing is this. I think a lot of Bears fans are hesitant to pay money right now to older players. You're in the start of a rebuild. Why would you give an older guy a 1-year contract? Well, they're going to have to pay somebody, and not everyone on the free agency market is under the age of 25, except very few people are under the age of 25 because it's like pretty much impossible unless you're released, right? So you're going to have to be paying money to guys who are a little bit older, and you have the ability to do it. Like, you had one of the youngest rosters in the NFL last year. You're going to have like 7 draft picks, probably more with a trade down. You're going to have an extremely young roster. You can afford to have, and you need to have some veteran presence in there. So don't be surprised if they're going after a couple guys who are on the wrong side of 30. Bobby Wagner, 32. Frank Clark will be 30 when the season starts. Like, this is just what you have to do, man. Like, you can find your guys, like, you're going to pay, say it's Isaac Seumalo, or say it's, how old is Jawan Taylor, right? You're going to pay some guys who are around 27 the 4-year, 5-year contracts. So you're going to be here for the entire Super Bowl window. But you also do need to pay stopgap players for a couple of years, just like they did last year, right? The Bears were going to be a horrible team. Everyone knew that. And they paid a ton of guys who were, 29, 30 plus 1-year contracts because you just need you just need some veteran presence. You need to fill roster spots. So it's going to happen. And if that's the case, then why not that be Bobby Wagner? Why not that be even Eric Kendricks, who was released by the Vikings? I mean, 137 tackles last year, but no interceptions, no forced fumbles. That's not good for a Matt Eberflus defense that wants to take the ball away. But like, there there are some names here that are really intriguing to me. And again, I'm expecting them the day it opens to be extremely
Well,
active.
so this goes back to what the Bears and their cap space, because you can like go to Bobby Wagner and say, hey, you want a pillow contract? We'll give you 1 year and 20 million or whatever, something far. Whereas another team, like, I don't know, whoever, like, all right, we'll give you 3 years and 45 or something, where you're getting 15 a year. Like maybe the Bears come in and say, hey, we'll give you 1 and 20, and you could go back out there and approve it year and say, all right, I'm back, but maybe at 32, maybe you don't, maybe that's more likely with Clark. I don't know. But, the Bears in that cap space, that gives you an opportunity there. But speaking of free agency, and we obviously mentioned Orlando Brown Jr., who wasn't tagged, and he's just an unrestricted free agent. What do you think about the idea that the Bears should go for McGlinchey instead of Brown, and to put McGlinchey at right tackle and still go with Braxton Jones at left tackle, which we're Braxton Jones guys for the record. Like me especially, I really like Braxton Jones. I think he's going to be really, really solid. I think he could be like a better Charles Leno, who was a 7th round pick and then became a multi-year starter and was really solid. Like I think Jones can be better than Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle.
Yeah.
But so like maybe you go and get McGlinchey, who'll be cheaper than Orlando Brown Jr., and you put him at right tackle and you allocate those assets elsewhere.
I think that's okay. I'm not in love with McGlinchey as a free agent target. It's an upgrade, but I'm not in love with it. But I also sort of feel the same way about Orlando Brown. Like, it's an upgrade.
Qualms about Orlando Brown
I have
Jr.
qualms. He's an upgrade. And I'm not going to be upset if they get him because he makes your football team better. But I don't know what he's looking at as far as a contract. But if I had to guess, it's pretty lucrative.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I just don't know if the value is there, right? And we're in a value-based offseason here. But at the same time, like, this is a weak free agency class in general. So you have the ability to pay top dollar to the best free agent and eat a little, like, even if he doesn't live up to your value, you can eat that because the rest of the guys you're paying are not going to cost you that much. Like, you're going to have upgrades across the roster that won't cost you as much because you don't have to pay. That there's not a lot of top guys at each position that you're going to want to pay. And you have the most cap space in the league by $40 million. I'd be fine. Like, I think I'd be fine giving Orlando Brown Jr. that money, even if he doesn't live up to the value of it, but he makes your team better because you have the ability to do it, and you're not taking money away from, like, it's not precluding you from getting someone else, right? There's no one else in this free agency market that I look at where I say, well, if you paid Orlando Brown Jr. like a 4-year contract, $75 million, well, now you can't get this guy, right? I don't think there's anyone in the free agency market that I look at that way. So I think I'm okay. Like, I'm okay with I have my qualms about Orlando Brown Jr., but I'm okay with it. I think you have to do it. I mean, I'm okay banking on players who have proven themselves to be very good at football. You know what I mean? Like,
which you need on this roster. This roster needs a lot of those guys.
You just need good players.
Yes.
And there's always things to be said about a change of scenery, and maybe it's a change of position, right? Maybe he goes back to right tackle.
Fair.
And maybe the position he played with the Ravens, and maybe he returns to that all-pro Ravens form that he was in 2018, 2019. So I'm not out on McGlinchey, but as I just talked myself through that, I think I'm fine giving Orlando Brown Jr. the bag. Give him the bag.
So then the only question becomes, like, do you move Braxton Jones to right tackle? I mean, I guess this is a question you can answer once you cross that bridge when you get there. But
yeah, like, I don't think that it's a choice. Like, I don't think it's Orlando Brown Jr. or Braxton Jones. Like, I don't think that they can't coexist. You know what I mean? Like, I think they can find a way for both those guys to be on the same starting offensive line unit.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%.
Well, the only reason I say this is because, like, there are people who are, like, out on Orlando Brown Jr. because it means he's replacing Braxton Jones, and Braxton Jones will never see the field again. I don't think that's the case. Yeah. They'll find a way to work it out. They'll switch right to left. It happens. They'll find a way. So I'm fine with that. I want to go back to this real quick because I've been seeing it. It's resurfaced. This is my guy, and he's the top free agent target at wide receiver that no one talks about anymore. I mean, seriously, why not OBJ?
It's just so weird. Like, it's so weird how, because he's like 33.
No, he's not 33. I He's 32.
Oh God, sue me, jeez. So sorry.
He's 30.
Okay, I don't know. It's so weird how like something about like how everything happened with him during the season, and then he was signing with the Cowboys but wasn't, and now like radio silence, because usually like guys like him, like sometimes like free agents go to the combine and like kind of mill around and try to kick the tires on, like, and we haven't heard anything from Odell Beckham Jr. in 4 or 5 months.
I mean, he posts on
More?
Instagram.
Yeah, but like I just mean like there's been nothing of substance. Like
No rumors, right?
There's been nothing.
Yeah.
So that's so bizarre. Like I don't think this is true, but is he just done? Like is he just like,
No.
cool, I'm good? Like,
no.
Do we know that for sure though?
Yes.
Positive.
I mean,
your close friend Odell,
Jake,
told you that
I'd say I'm
back.
really good at interpreting Instagram captions. He wants to play football. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure. It means like I see what he's posting. I'm like, all right, there's a hidden message. There's a subtweet in here.
Whose Instagram captions are you like?
OBJ's.
Just
his. What
are your credentials? What are your credentials to like?
I don't have any examples for you, but when I see an Instagram caption that's, it's sort of a subtweet, I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a subtweet. I know who that caption may be directed to.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I just got a sense for these things. Let's look at OBJ's. Here's OBJ's last caption. I always make my hand work. I'm just waiting on the cards to shuffle. So no matter where he goes, he's waiting for the cards to shuffle. He'll make it work wherever he goes. Perfect interpretation.
We might have to make this a weekly thing.
This might have to be a weekly thing. Interpret.
And no, not just Odell. I want to just, I think what we're going to do going forward is I'm going to start picking Instagram captions that I find from athletes or influencers or on my explore page. And I'm just going to read them to you. And we're going to put them on the screen or something, and you're just going to tell us what it means. I think we're going to do that. I think that's going to become a shtick on the show. Okay, so Kevin Lapka, noted Odell Beckham Jr. whisperer, says that he's coming back. Okay, in the event that, to answer your question, in the event that Odell Beckham Jr. does come back, it would depend on the price. We're talking about the Bears and having all this cap space and being like, oh, well, you can overpay if you want. I wouldn't want to overpay for a 30-year-old receiver who's already had a torn ACL and has had injury issues over his entire career. If the price is right, I wouldn't hate giving him like a 2-year contract for the right price to come in, especially if you draft someone in the later rounds like Hyatt from Tennessee, or whoever, what's his face, Flowers from BC. Depending on who you draft and what ends up happening, I wouldn't hate it, because I don't think, unless you trade down twice, I don't think you're getting Jackson Smith-Njigba or Quentin Johnson. And you need help at receiver for sure. It's like the problem is you already have a guy on the roster who's so high upside and low floor in Chase Claypool. It feels real dangerous having two of those type of guys who are high ceiling for sure, talented, no doubt, can be game-breaking type of players, 1,000%. But the floor is, for both of them, what we saw from Chase Claypool, or rather what we didn't see from him.
Yeah, but
the floor.
But you only say that because of the
injury.
Low. You only say that because of the injury. Because he played really well with the Rams when he was signed.
Sure.
He scored a touchdown on the Super Bowl. He was going to be the Super Bowl MVP probably.
I don't know about that.
He scored the first touchdown of the game. He had like 60 yards in like the first quarter.
Yeah, but
if he scored another touchdown, had 100 yards, Cooper Kupp won the MVP of that game, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Cooper Kupp won MVP.
But also, conversely, if you'd ended the Super Bowl this year at the end of the first quarter, Travis Kelce would have won the Super Bowl MVP too. So, and then he did nothing for the rest of the game. So, could go either way there. Like, it's just, that's just my thing, is like Odell has always felt like such like a, high variance player. And it feels like you already have that with Claypool. And I don't know how I feel about if you're the Bears. Like, it feels like if you're the Bears, you need someone who's just way more level baseline. Like, what you're going to.
Yeah, but there's no one like that in free agency.
I agree.
He's the most safe of any receiver in free agency. I mean,
just saying so. So like, if he's the most safe, aren't you better just staying away?
I mean, maybe, but I think you're overvaluing how much you'd have to pay him. Okay. His contract with the Rams that he signed this on November 11th because he was released by the Browns on November 5th, 1 year, $1.2 million. Now, again, you're like halfway through the season at that point. So,
and coming from the Browns where he had done nothing, and then he went to the Rams and had a good, 4 months or
but
whatever.
still, like OBJ, it would strike me that OBJ would be someone who's going to try to juice as much money out of you as possible. You know what I mean? But I think he's also.
Well, that's why he didn't sign with the Cowboys.
Right.
Was
that why? It was just a financial thing?
Allegedly, but
I think part of it was,
then also
I don't know
that
if he was ready
video
to play.
came out and stuff. It was weird.
I don't know if he was ready to play. Again, looking at his Instagram videos, working out, I'm not sure he was ready to be full go at that time. I'm not sure, but I like, if it's, let's pitch this to you, 2 years, $8 million.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah, it's not going to be more than that.
It might.
It's not going to be more than that. It's like, come on. The value has already been knocked down because he's coming off an ACL. It's knocked down for every player, right? That's probably why Tony Pollard didn't get a giant contract with Tony Pollard's not coming off an ACL. He's coming off with a fracture. But, same type of deal. Coming off an ACL, hasn't played in this long. He doesn't hold the leverage in contract negotiations. He just doesn't. He can't sit there at the negotiating table with his agent and Ryan Poles and say, hey, I want $7 million per year. He can't. He's in no position to do it. And there's like, he can't just say, oh, well, the Bears aren't going to give me that, but the Cardinals will. No one's going to give me that. And I just like, it seems to me, look, T. Higgins is off the board. That's not happening. It seems like it. I think it should be possible. I think the Bengals would be stupid not to, but they might, if they want to put themselves in cap hell, they can put themselves in cap hell. And I think they want to do that because they value him.
Well, I mean, if they want to be the Chiefs or Rams, you end up getting a ring out of it.
Right. I mean, it's true. And then, hey, you're one and done, though. You win a ring, and then you're probably effed for the next. I mean, I wouldn't count out Joe Burrow, but in the AFC anyway, it's tough. But we had so many conversations about the trade possibilities. It's and we get excited about them. Don't get me wrong, I got excited about them. But in reality, it's easier when a player is not bound to anything and they're a free agent, and it's more likely that it's to just say, hey, we'll sign this guy than it is to work out a trade for Mike Evans or DeAndre Hopkins, who at this point are the last two that are really, maybe Michael Pittman, those three, and maybe Higgins. But right now, as far as, and actually, we're recording this before this happens, DeAndre Hopkins is going to go on the Pat McAfee show. It'll be interesting to see what he says going on there today. But I can't bank, like, as far as addressing issues for the Chicago Bears this offseason, you cannot bank on them making a trade for one of those guys. You cannot bank on it.
Sure.
And sometimes, the way it happened last year, these guys demand trades after the draft, you could have figured out your whole, you can't approach this whole offseason and say, well, we're not going to pay money to this guy. We're not going to draft this guy because we're banking on a trade for Hopkins or Evans in the offseason or in the summer. You can't do it, right? I would love for that to be the case, but you just can't. And like that, it just scares me a little bit with those things. So go get OBJ here before we end the show. If you can figure it out real quick, because I don't know if we'll record next Monday or Wednesday, whatever we'll do, we'll probably record the day of free agency beginning. And who knows, there could be multiple contracts made that day. Ideal free agency, first 2 days of free agency, 3 players you think they'll sign. Not who you want to sign. The 3 players you think they'll sign. The first 3 players you think they'll sign. Maybe not the first 3, but the top 3 you think they'll sign.
I think they're getting one of Brown or McGlinchey for sure.
Conviction. Which one is it? Come on.
See, I'm trying to balance between what I want and what I think will happen. I'll say McGlinchey.
Okay.
I think they'll try to spread the money out. So I'll say McGlinchey. I think you convinced me. I think they're going to get Wagner.
Makes a ton of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I think you convinced me on that one. And then I'll say last. I'm going to say one of the. This is going to be a curveball. I think they're going to get Gardner Johnson to play the slot corner.
He played slot corner with the Saints, right?
Eagles.
And then flexed to safety.
Eagles.
No, he played safety with the Eagles, I thought. I'm pretty sure he did.
That might throw a wrench in my plans.
Because I like CD Gardner Johnson a lot. Game-changing player this year for the Eagles, but he's a safety. So,
but if they sign him to play, no,
I think you can. Happens a lot. It's an easy.
If they convince him to switch, and if that would depend on money. If somebody's not paying him more money somewhere else, But I guess like you could say that about any free agents. Because Bradbury, but he'll get premium money.
Premium money.
So that's why I'll still say Johnson, and I think they'll try and convince him to play slot corner. Again, which would then make your secondary fucking gross, which would be gross in a good way. So I'll say McGlinchey, Wagner, and Gardner Johnson.
Okay.
With the third one being kind of a Hail Mary, but
okay.
All right, who do you think then?
So I think Javon Hargrave.
Okay.
Orlando Brown Jr., Isaac Seumalo. I got 5 for you.
I saw where this was going as soon as you started.
Bobby Wagner, OBJ. Those are my 5.
I think OBJ is going to – I don't think he'll sign on day one.
He won't sign on day one. That'll be a longer process.
Yeah.
So let's go. And Bobby Wagner probably won't sign day one either. So the three guys, he might. But sometimes those guys that get released, it takes sometimes those guys sign in like July.
True.
You know what I mean? They just kind of sit back and wait for the right spot. But I think the thing that it's important is like the Bears are an intriguing destination for all of these players. They can pay with the money. They're going to be a competitive team this year, at least competitive. They should win games against good teams.
You could make them competitive.
You could probably get them into the playoffs, and then the year after that, Super Bowl ready.
Yeah.
You should be Super Bowl ready. So it's attractive for all these players. I'll go Orlando Brown Jr., Javon Hargrave, Isaac Seumalo. For those who don't know, right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, played in the Super Bowl, really talented. Those 3 guys, you shore up 2 of your offensive line positions, and you shore up the 3 tech. Like, that's like a good off season there. Like, if you get those 2 guys, that's a good off season. I think that's what they do. And to be fair, you should be pissed if these things that Jake and I are saying don't happen in the first couple of days. They have zero excuse not to be extremely active from the moment that clock opens for free agency. Boom. We have the money. We have the leverage. We'll pay you. We've had months to think about this. We've had months to understand what's available to us. Make it happen. Like, don't sit back and wait. And I understand there's going to be people who say, well, you know, it is a weaker free agency class, so maybe they save some of their money and spend it more in 2024. You can't do it. You have to spend a certain threshold anyway.
I think they'll save some. I don't think they're going to be super frugal, though.
Yeah. Okay. That sure. Like the value thing is real.
When I say save some, I mean like for me, like going with McGlinchey instead of Orlando Brown Jr. or going with, you know, in this instance, this hypothetical, like Gardner Johnson instead of Bradbury. Like going.
Is that what good teams do, Jake?
Well, no, but like I mean, McGlinchey's still really good.
Sure.
You know, like I could see it like that. I don't think they're going to nickel and dime teams. Real fast. Do you think that the Larry Ogunjobi failed signing impacts how they approach this free agency class at all? Like you jumped in right away and then you were stuck in this waiting period for the physical and then you were kind of screwed because, you know, by the time the physical came back failed and it was like a week later and most of the guys were off the board. Do you think that has any impact on this free agent approach?
No, I don't.
You can't, right?
It can't. I mean,
you can't be scared.
Move on. No,
can't
you can't be scared. He's actually a free agent too, so maybe they go back to the Ogunjobi well.
Yeah.
No, that would be shocking. But no, I think, and I think that's actually a really good conversation as it pertains to. I've used that phrase like 40 times in this episode. Chase Claypool, right?
Sure.
Like that situation should not preclude you from going after DeAndre Hopkins or Mike Evans via trade. You live and you learn. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. You can't let it sit in the back of your mind. Same goes for Larry Ogunjobi. Don't be cautious with it. I mean, you have to know health situation. You'd like to know your target's health situations before they take a physical, but that was completely unforeseen. No one knew that he was going to fail that physical in the way he did. You know, like you cannot let it. I mean, it caused you to be cautious, but you can't be like you just full go. We like this guy. You know, do your background checks, but don't let it affect the way you approach free agency. So
that's fair. All right. Well, we will come back next week once free agency is open. We'll record at our usual time, and we'll be in it. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of signings that have been announced. Maybe the Bears have announced some. So we'll be back in a week to discuss free agency, discuss what the next steps are. Maybe we have a trade of the number 1 overall pick. We'll see. We really didn't discuss the interior offensive line today. We were focused on the tackles. We'll get to that next week as well. So come back next week. Shout out to all our new viewers and listeners coming over from the On Tap Sports Network. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. All our regulars, we still love you guys. You guys are the best. All our listeners, all our viewers, you are the best. Welcome to the family. You guys rock. We will see you next week. shout out to On Tap Sports Network one more time for bringing us in. Buzz, Tony, and the crew, you guys are the best. We appreciate you. So we will see you, myself and Kevin, for another edition of Bears Nation Podcast brought to you by On Tap Sports Network. We will see you next Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central to go over free agency. And until then, bear down.
Fair enough.